Is Joe Biden the most progressive president in U.S. history? Well, since he's about to leave office, I think it's time we talk about where he falls on the political spectrum as a president in relation to some of the other candidates. And by candidates, I mean basically every Democrat since FDR is all in the mix for being considered the most progressive president in U.S. history. That's essentially when the Democratic Party became the Progressive Party. So let's talk about what Biden did as president. And I have a list here of some stuff. We have his Inflation Reduction Act, which contained a $369 billion investment to fight climate change. The bipartisan infrastructure deal, which, as its name suggests, won over some Republicans. The American Rescue Plan, withdrawing from Afghanistan, signing the PACT Act to address service members' exposure to toxic burn pits, Lena Khan being appointed to the Federal Trade Commission. She's a very aggressive enforcer and a believer in textual antitrust application. Rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement that was started under the Obama administration and Trump withdrew from it early in 2017. A $15 minimum wage for federal contractors. And one notable piece of legislation on social issues, he signed the Respect for Marriage Act in 2022. And there were some Republicans who voted for that as well. But I think that's a pretty impressive list of progressive accomplishments. Can't really think of a lot of Democratic presidents since LBJ who really come close to signing that many bills that specifically are like pertaining to economics, progressive social issues, things like that. LBJ, notoriously good legislator, or I guess I should say notoriously good with signing legislation and encouraging it in the Congress. Also had the Vietnam War, which was protested by so many people, including progressives. FDR, likewise, economically progressive powerhouse, minimum wage, Social Security, proposed an economic Bill of Rights in the late 1930s, wanted to pack the Supreme Court to get more progressives on it. He had his handling of World War II, which also had some less than progressive decisions like the internment of Japanese Americans in camps that, if it were done today, would be opposed probably both by progressives and conservatives to a slightly lesser extent, even if we were at war with the nation. Very, very economically populist guy. Truman has some of that economic populism, not quite on FDR's level. He did what he called a fair deal instead of the New Deal. And a lot of the justices he appointed to the Supreme Court, by the way, were fairly conservative too. Then we've got John F. Kennedy, actually ran on universal health care, believe it or not, which is more progressive than Biden did when he was running for president. Kennedy was a supporter of civil rights. Generally, more of a milquetoast Democrat, though. Someone who a lot of conservatives actually look at and say, oh, this guy would be a moderate Republican if he were around today. And they're probably wrong, but they're also right in the sense that he doesn't necessarily represent the most left-wing Democrat there is. He cut taxes, and he was definitely more conservative on economics than LBJ. Jimmy Carter, who is the next Democratic president after Kennedy Johnson, is definitely out of the mix in terms of being the most progressive president. He was big into deregulation, especially deregulating the airline industry. A bit more progressive when it comes to foreign policy. I'll get to that in a minute and why I don't think that makes him the most progressive president in U.S. history. But big on promoting peace, big on advocating peace in the Middle East. He wrote a whole book on it back in 2010, I think. But one-term president, not the most progressive, I would say. And then we get to our boy Bill Clinton, Slick Willie, the guy from Arkansas who basically came along and said, Republicans are right about some stuff and Democrats are right about some stuff, so we're going to mix them together. We're going to be the third way. We're going to be progressive, but we're also going to be conservative. Brilliant public speaker, but not a stalwart progressive. One of the things he did early on that was at least somewhat progressive was arguing for universal health care. Hillary Clinton was involved in that. He wanted to guarantee everyone health care. A lot of people forget about this, but by very early on into his term, that had failed miserably. He failed to get universal health care. He also signed the crime bill of 1994, which of course was written by then Senator Joe Biden, among others. And that's something that progressives have had headaches over for a very, very long time. Then we get to Barack Obama. So Barack Obama, of course, signed the Affordable Care Act, massive Medicaid expansion. People can stay on their parents' plan till they're 26. Individual mandate, which is very unpopular among conservatives and even among some progressives. But overall, I haven't really met any progressive who has said, no, I think Obamacare should be repealed. Most people agree, most people on the left agree that this was a step in the right direction. We got the Paris Climate Accord from Barack Obama. We got Dodd-Frank, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That's a whole new agency. We got some foreign policy decisions that were kind of a mixed bag. Big on drone strikes. Didn't necessarily launch any ground wars, like send the army anywhere, but also got us involved in a lot of places overseas. Generally, also progressive on social issues in the sense that he didn't come into office supporting same-sex marriage, but he actually ended up getting convinced by Joe Biden in 2012 that he should support same-sex marriage. So he changed his mind and he outright admitted it. He pardoned a lot of nonviolent drug offenders as well. That's just straight up progressive on social issues. So Obama, of course, if he's never president, Biden's probably never president because Biden was his vice president. So he did a lot, that's for sure. He got 2 terms, unlike Biden. So then Biden comes along. And yeah, he's the first Democratic president to come in supporting same-sex marriage. Trump, of course, being the first, but by that point, the Supreme Court had already settled it. So he wasn't really breaking any ground by saying he's okay with same-sex marriage. But yeah, Biden, I think it's fair to say, after having run through each of these Democratic presidents' records in a nutshell, I think it's fair to say that Biden, in terms of policy, is the 3rd most progressive president in U.S. history, behind LBJ and FDR. And I know a lot of people who are progressive are probably going to dislike that because of the Israel policy, the Israel-Gaza policy. But at the same time, I also feel that foreign policy is a difficult thing to categorize. What exactly is a progressive foreign policy or a conservative foreign policy? It's something that people are all over the map on. There are some progressives who are strongly supportive of Israel. There are some conservatives who are very critical of Israel and actually are at the point where they are almost supporting Palestine, or they outright do. So yeah, that's something that definitely, you could argue, blemishes Biden's progressive record, but I don't think it tanks him as being less progressive than Obama or Bill Clinton or Jimmy Carter or Truman or Kennedy. I think some of these legislative accomplishments, these are just massive. On top of the social issues, the same-sex marriage thing, appointing Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court, who's very progressive. Just someone who's gone through this really shocking shift from being this conservative, moderate Democrat to one of the more progressive modern presidents. I would say Bill Clinton's the least progressive Democrat we've had since FDR. And Biden, he kind of represented a shift. Like, Obama was pretty similar to Clinton, except a little bit more progressive. But then Biden comes along and really starts working with this legislation thing, starts hammering out executive orders, gets us back in the Paris Climate Accord, restores relationships with a lot of the world leaders after Trump sort of turned his back on them and they sort of laughed at him and found him to be a clown. But yeah, maybe that's a little bit of my bias, but yeah, he also was big into supporting Ukraine. And I know that's another issue where it's like, okay, what is the progressive move on Russia-Ukraine? Because there are a lot of hardcore leftists who are sympathetic to Russia and don't really like Ukraine. But there are a lot of progressives and Biden supporters who say, no, we need to fund Ukraine. They were invaded by Russia. They have the right to defend themselves. And then there are a lot of conservatives who say, yeah, I support Ukraine. For example, Mike Pence. But then there are also a lot of hardcore conservatives who are like, stop sending Ukraine money, end foreign aid. We shouldn't be stepping in. We're going to cause World War III. Russia is going to get mad. So yeah, That is why I think foreign policy is often difficult to evaluate. Another thing that's tough is the different times in which these people served as president. Obviously, I gave Biden a lot of progressive credit for his climate change policies, but for example, FDR and Truman, there was not really any conversation about climate change. So that's not really a thing. Like, I can't evaluate their environmental policies super effectively because environmental protection was not as big of an issue back then. So yeah, that's my assessment of Biden. I think he's done a good job of surprising progressives on most, but not all, issues. And I'm interested to see where the Democratic Party is going to go after he leaves and after Trump gets done with another 4 years or so in office. Will they double down on progressivism, or will they move right? Will they become the MAGA light party? We shall see. But yeah, let me know what you think of Biden and how progressive he is in the comments. Is he more progressive than FDR and LBJ? Is he the most conservative president in U.S. history? Feel free to express your opinion. As always, please like, comment, or subscribe to the channel if you found this video interesting or insightful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will speak to you in the next video.